I've always been someone who considered myself untouchable. I was surrounded by wealth, power, and the kind of influence that most people only dream of. My friends, if you could call them that, were the same. We belonged to the upper echelons of society. Our names whispered with awe, feared by some, envied by many. But none of us ever thought that he, a homeless man, ragged and forgotten on the street, could change everything. We certainly didn't expect that our lives would spiral into a nightmare because of a simple act of cruelty. How could we have known? We had everything. At least, we thought we did. It all started on a Friday night, one of those crisp evenings when the air is filled with the energy of the city. My friends and I were headed to one of the most exclusive restaurants in town, where tables were reserved months in advance, and the food was served with more finesse than most people's entire lives. We were dressed in designer clothes, jewelry that glittered under the streetlights, and the latest gadgets in our hands. We felt invincible. As we walked past the bustling streets, there he was, sitting in the shadows, his presence barely noticeable to the eyes that were trained to overlook him. His clothes were tattered, his hair wild, and his face. Well, it was a face you couldn't forget once you looked at it closely. There was something ancient about it, the kind of face that carried the weight of centuries, though none of us realized it then. Spare some change? His voice was raspy, like someone who hadn't spoken in years. We stopped, not because we wanted to help, but because we were bored. We were always looking for amusement, and in that moment, humiliating him seemed like a fun distraction. Sebastian, the loudest and most obnoxious among us, snorted. Change? You're asking us for change? Look at you. He leaned in, pretending to inspect the man's face. What did you do with your life to end up here, huh? The others laughed, and I, stupidly, joined in. There was something about the way we towered over him that made us feel bigger, more important. Our laughter echoed down the empty street, sharp and cruel. I wish I could go back and erase that moment. The man looked up at us, his eyes, not of anger, but of something else, something deeper, darker. I thought I saw sadness, but there was also a flicker of something ancient, like the flicker of a dying flame that still holds the power to burn. Beware, he said softly, his voice suddenly steady, for you know not the curse you awaken. We laughed again, louder this time. Curse? I mocked. What curse? You can't even afford a meal, and you're talking about curses? But his words hung in the air, cold and heavy. For centuries I've walked this earth, cursed to wander without a name, without a kingdom, until someone shows me true kindness. But you have mocked me, and now the curse is yours to bear. His eyes locked with mine, and for a brief second I felt something. A chill ran down my spine, though I quickly brushed it off. We walked away, still laughing, but something had changed. There was an uneasiness that followed me, a shadow that clung to the back of my mind. That night, after the laughter and the drinks, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I chalked it up to guilt, though at the time, I would have never admitted it to myself. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his words echoed in my mind. You know not the curse you awaken. The first sign came the next morning. I woke up to an empty bank account. At first, I thought it was a mistake, some sort of glitch. I called the bank, furious, demanding answers. But they told me that there were no mistakes. Every penny I had was gone, and there was no trace of where it went. I wasn't the only one. By the end of the day, Sebastian, Lily, and the others had all lost their fortunes too. It was as if everything we had worked for, everything we had ever possessed, had vanished overnight. But that was only the beginning. The real horror came later. It started with the mirrors. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's where it began. One by one, we started noticing our reflections change. At first, it was subtle, just a flicker in the corner of my eye. I thought I was imagining it, but soon it became undeniable. Every time I looked in a mirror, my face seemed older, more withered, like time was speeding up for me alone. My skin sagged, my hair grayed, and my eyes, They were no longer mine. They were hollow, haunted. The others saw it too. Sebastian, who had once been the picture of health, looked like a ghost of his former self. Lily, always so beautiful, aged decades in a matter of days. None of us could understand what was happening. We went to doctors, specialists, anyone who could explain why we were deteriorating so rapidly. But no one had answers. Then came the nightmares. They started the same for all of us. Visions of an ancient kingdom, grand and golden, but falling into ruin. In these dreams, we were not ourselves. We were part of that kingdom, part of its downfall, and at the center of it all was the homeless man. No, not a man. A king who had been betrayed, cast out, and cursed to wander the earth for eternity. In the dreams, we saw the moment of his curse, a powerful sorcerer condemning him to a life of suffering until anyone, showed him true kindness. But no one ever did. We tried to ignore it, to pretend that it was all just coincidence, that the dreams were nothing more than our minds playing tricks on us. But deep down, we knew the truth. We had awakened something ancient, something vengeful, and it wasn't going to stop until we paid the price. Desperation drove us back to the streets. We searched for him, the cursed king, hoping that somehow we could undo what we had done. Days turned into weeks, and we found nothing. He had vanished, as if he had never existed. But the curse was very real. I began to lose everything. My home, my possessions, my status. It was as if the universe was stripping me of everything that had once defined me, leaving me bare and exposed. The others fared no better. One by one, they lost their jobs, their families, their lives crumbling to dust. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the final sign came. We started seeing him. At first, it was just glimpses, out of the corner of my eye, in a crowd, in the reflections of the windows. But then, he began to appear more frequently, always watching, always silent. His presence was suffocating, a constant reminder of the curse we had brought upon ourselves. The others saw him too. Sebastian, once bold and brash, was reduced to a shell of a man, terrified to leave his home. Lily became paranoid, convinced that he was waiting for her around every corner. And me? I was haunted by the knowledge that we had done this to ourselves. We had mocked a man we didn't understand, and now we were paying the price. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't live with the guilt, the fear, the endless torment of knowing that my actions had caused this. So I went back to the place where it all began, the street where we had first seen him. I stood there in the shadows, waiting for him to appear. I didn't know what I was going to say, or what I could possibly do to make things right. But I had to try, and then he was there. He stepped out of the darkness, his face still as haunting as the first time I saw it. But this time, there was something different. He wasn't just a man. He was something more, something ancient and powerful, something I couldn't fully comprehend. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words barely audible. "I didn't know." He stared at me, his eyes piercing through the darkness. "No," he said softly, "you didn't. But the curse was never about knowledge. It was about kindness, and you showed none." Tears welled in my eyes. "What can I do? How can I break this curse?" He tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "You cannot. The curse is not yours to break. It is mine. I walk this earth, waiting, searching for the kindness that will release me. Until then you, like many before you, will suffer the consequences of your cruelty." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, broken and lost. The curse never lifted. We never found a way to make things right. And now, I walk this earth, just like him, bound by the weight of my own actions, haunted by the man we mocked. I don't know where he is now. Maybe he's still wandering, waiting for someone to show him the kindness that will finally set him free. But until then, I live with the knowledge that sometimes The smallest acts of cruelty can have the greatest consequence.